Hey, it's Dr. Jaime, and let's talk about the importance of salt and electrolytes. If you're living the low carb life like me, your requirements are actually much higher. And there's only one source that we trust in our home, and it's the people and products at Redmond Real Salt. They keep us coming back for more every time. Real salt's an all natural, unrefined sea salt harvested from an ancient ocean. It's full of natural minerals that make it healthy, delicious, and pink or red looking. They're also the best selling brand in America's health and food stores. Redmond Real Salt is so pure, it's free of pollutants and microplastics found in many other natural refined salts. The Redmond Salt Deposit is in Redmond, Utah, where the team enjoys award winning work conditions and generous pay. And since they own and control the whole process, you can be sure that real salt comes to you through their world class production facilities in its unrefined, mineral rich, delicious state, exactly as nature intended. Redmond has amazing natural products, including salt, electrolytes, toothpaste, and so much more. So check out the entire line at www.redmond.life, where you can use my code DrFit, that's DRFIT, for a discount on all Redmond Real Salt and Relight products. Welcome to the Fit and Fabulous podcast with Dr. Jaime Seaman. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jaime, and welcome back to the Fit and Fabulous podcast. I have an incredible guest on today's podcast. Charles D'Angelo is joining me. And Charles is a transformation coach that has used his own journey to help others understand their habits and create a consistent and healthy life for themselves. He's worked with people from politicians to board certified physicians like myself, and his very unique approach has helped hundreds of people lose weight and keep it off. Charles has an incredible story that he's going to share with us, so I'm not going to give any of it away. Charles, welcome to the Fit and Fabulous podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So Charles, part of your amazing transformation was being an obese teenager who lost over 160 pounds and absolutely transformed into what you are today. And we were just chatting a minute ago about how transformed people transform people. And so tell us about this incredible story and your life as a teenager and kind of that journey to where you are now.
Yeah. So at age 17, I weighed 360 pounds. I mean, going up a flight of just 4 stairs was difficult for me. Doing things like tying my shoes, approaching other people, getting in and out of a car, going to the curb from the car. I mean, things most people really don't ever give a second thought to were really, really, really challenging. And I came from a very challenging family. My parents were both very loving and attentive people, but they both had their own issues. My father's family struggled with obesity. He was Italian. He was morbidly overweight all of his life. All of his family members struggle with the comorbidities associated with obesity. My grandparents had diabetes, hypertension. My mother's side, while certainly they weren't overweight, they struggled with addiction. My mother's father passed away at about age 42 of alcoholism. Her mother struggled with alcoholism. Eventually, my mom, who up until about age 10 in my life was my best friend, turned to my worst enemy. And I then turned to food. I was a very sensitive, intelligent, empathic child, very different than all the other boys. And I was taller and bigger as it was. So bullying was something I dealt with every single day. And it wasn't until age 17 where I had an epiphany of sorts that I really recognized that if I wanted my life to be different, I was going to have to be different. I was going to have to trade all of my excuses for the way my life was for reasons to totally take charge of my life and the habits that were really the things that were causing me to be in a state I was so unhappy with.
So I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people because I think a lot of people have these, kind of epiphanies or what they think is, but they try multiple times and then
Yes.
fail multiple times. And so for you to be somebody that has been so successful in transforming not only physically, mentally, spiritually, like was there an event that happened? Like what happened to actually precipitate this magic moment for you where you said like, I'm never going back?
Sure. So it wasn't one thing. As for most people, it was a cascade of things. I was at the point in grade school that I wanted to leave the school I had attended because of how horrific the bullying had become. I couldn't get a date to save my life. I'd always wanted a girlfriend, and I went to an all boys school, and when all the other boys would have dates to a dance, I would be the boy that was, sitting outside in the parking lot, only dreaming about having a girl to dance with and to attend such an event with. So there wasn't just one thing, and I think that's the case for most people when they get to that threshold of change. I think if you are watching this and you feel like I did, stuck in a place you hate, you've got to stack things up in your own head, as unpleasant as it might be, and recognize that what you need most to change is where you least want to look.
Mm.
By that, I mean, it's not pleasant to look at the parts of yourself that really ought to be addressed. It's not fun to recognize that the position I find myself in, no matter what your age, no matter what your background, no matter what your education, no matter what your environment, those things, while they certainly are valid and legitimate and probably true, they could be very difficult like mine were. They're not the reasons your life isn't working. The reason your life isn't working in most part is because of the way that you're either reacting or responding to all of those things I just mentioned. So the
Mhm.
first step in really creating change like I have is to get clear on really what it is you want. What is it that you want to aim at? You have to have a target. And so many people, particularly those young people that I coach clients from all ages, all walks of life, many of whom I never breathe the same air with, so to speak. It's on Zoom. And they all reach their goals for a variety of reasons. One is they have a very high resolution image of how they want their life to look. So if you're sitting here with me and you're saying, I could never do what this guy has done or what the doc is suggesting that she's been able to do. The truth is you certainly can. In fact, you could probably surpass both of us if you'll have compelling reasons, knowing what you want in high resolution very clearly. So it's not something that's amorphous. It's not something that's unclear. It's very specific. And then stacking up reasons as to why it's a must. This can't be something you tell yourself, I really ought to do, I really should do, I really might do. This has to be an absolute must. It becomes the things you need to do have to become as basic as hygiene, like brushing your teeth, putting gas in your car, getting dressed. And what are the things that most people need to do if you're watching this and you're struggling like I once did with weight? Very simple. You need to have one leg of healthy eating. So I always look at success as a three-legged stool.
Hmm.
You've got to have healthy food. It's very important. You have to have a smart, strategic way that you approach every day. And I tell clients, don't start your day until it's already finished. What does that mean? It means you need to have a plan in place that's so clear and so well thought out that no matter what adversity you might find, many of my clients are physicians, and they might get a call at 2:30 in the morning because one of their patients codes. For lay people, that means they're dying on the table there. And the physician has to drop everything and rush to the hospital to attend to the patient. We all can come up with our reasons not to stay with a plan. But when you think about all the things that could be possible and you have a very strategic plan in place with how you eat, food no longer is so overwhelming. It's just what you do. So that's one leg. The second leg is you've got to have routine exercise. You've got to ritualize it. And by that, I mean, it needs to be something that every single day, independent of your feelings and of your emotions, you're absolutely consistent with. Let me let you in on a little secret. I can't think of a time that I'm absolutely over the top enthusiastic every single day to go lift incredibly heavy weights and work out. Now, I get tremendous joy from it, but all of us as humans have to overcome the inevitable inertia that comes with being a human. My wife and I have a 14-month-old, a little boy. And if he happens to not have slept well the night before, and my alarm clock goes off at 4:45, and it'd be very easy for me to say, I'll just sleep until 5:30, 5:45. If you start to move those boundaries that you have in place, it becomes ever more easy to continue to move them. So you really want to set up a schedule, a ritual where it doesn't matter how things are going. It doesn't matter that it might be reasonable to sleep in. You've got to be unreasonable if you're going to be successful. You've got to have a very high standard for yourself, one that you're more concerned about holding yourself to than anyone else. You can't make your spouse, you can't make your children, you can't make your best buddy at work your coach. You don't want to turn your power over to someone else as a healthy adult. Part of being a healthy adult is taking responsibility for yourself. And that comes back to what I said earlier, which is you've got to recognize the choices you're making are the most important factor in the way your life is going. And if you'll change your choices, you can change your life. And that brings me to the third leg, which is why most people come to see me. And that is, my focus is on mindset. How do you disconnect from using food emotionally and reactively and spontaneously so that you're able to make progress consistently, no matter what your career, no matter what your circumstance? Doesn't matter, if you've just got out of school, you just got out of grade school and going into high school. Doesn't matter if you've changed careers. Doesn't matter if you have all of a sudden lost someone important in your life. None of those things have to derail you when you stay focused on the vision you have and the reasons you have for that vision. So those three aspects: healthy eating or food, regular exercise, and the right mindset, those three things, those three legs are allowed for me to lose 160 pounds. And now I've been fit and healthy far longer, nearly 2 decades, much, much longer than I ever was overweight.
This is incredible because as a physician, I think that most people could come into my office and tell me the foods they're supposed to eat, how often they're supposed to exercise. But I always say, like, there's some magic sauce between the people that actually are able to accomplish these things and the people that are perpetually trying, failing, and never actually see long-term success with it. You
Mhm.
talked about this just very clear vision of when you had this epiphany of like how you wanted your life different. What was that vision at age 17? Charles is 17 years old. What did that look like to you at age 17? This better life.
I just knew that I didn't want my biography to be my destiny. I could see my future in the lives of my relatives. Neither of my parents had ever graduated from university. Both of them made it through high school, but didn't further education. However, they imprinted on me a very, 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 very important point, which was, if I was willing to work hard enough and stay committed, there was no limit to what I would achieve. And I owe that work ethic to my father and my mother, despite all of their issues that they had, as all of our parents have. They really gave me the sense, the hope, that no matter what your beginnings are, that doesn't have to be where you finish up. So I always tell people the important thing in life is getting on the ladder of life. You might start at the very bottom rung. Maybe you come from a background like I did, where you don't have role models around you that really illustrate what to do. But perhaps you have a lot of people that will illustrate to you what not to do. And you start with that. So I had the vision that I did not want my life to look like the suffering I saw around me. I saw my grandparents struggling with a lack of education, not understanding what health issues really were. They didn't know what diabetes was or high blood pressure was. They didn't know why they were taking half of the 12 prescriptions that their doctor had given them.
Yeah.
My mother as well. So, I think that part of what drives me is a tremendous empathy, having come from such a difficult background. I think that's what gives each of us that answer the vocation of becoming a helper, you as a doctor, myself as a coach. That's what drives us. I mean, you were telling me a little bit before we went on about your story and how remarkable that was. I think that you're always in the best position to help people who are a former version of you. And so I don't know that it's really magic sauce as much as it is timing. I think that in medicine, I think that in coaching, that there's an aspect of what I'm sure you could probably reflect on and give examples for, of grace. There's something bigger than just mechanics. There's something more than just ABC of change. There's something to be said for timing. Why is it that some people have every reason to make change happen, but don't? And I think that comes down to accepting some givens of life. And that's having an understanding of the spiritual nature of yourself and of life. That psychology 101 can only get you so far. You have to also integrate a certain sense of your own connectedness to everything else. I mean, if you would have looked at my life, at what was going on, no one would have predicted that I would go on to write a book too, be endorsed by people like President Clinton. And I don't say those things to impress you; they impress me, but to impress upon people that if a kid coming from the background I came from could achieve the things I have achieved, why not you? Why
Mhm.
not now? What's in the way of you making a decision that you're going to start doing what you can? When people come to me, if I'm in a restaurant with my wife or out with a friend, and someone comes up and they've heard of me or they read my book, and they all often will unpack things that you don't typically unpack with a stranger, but they don't feel I'm a stranger because they've watched me or they've listened to me or they've read a book. And so it's quite an honor and a privilege having that window into people's lives. And I take it very, 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 very seriously. I mean, for someone to open their soul to me that I've just met, I really consider what I do a mission, a calling. And I think that you have to realize that if you're going to make your life a masterpiece, it really requires that you get in touch with the most painful parts of your life, being honest, telling yourself the truth about those things, and starting the process of doing the things you know you could. And you say, well, that sounds so common sense. Well, it's not that common. If you look at your life, are there things you're doing every day that you know you shouldn't be doing? You don't need someone to tell you. You don't need your doctor to tell you. Are there things that you know if you stopped doing them today, your life would get a heck of a lot better?
Mhm.
If you're honest with yourself, the answer for most of us is yes. And I'm not sitting here as some type of idol. I've done all that. I have to work on this stuff just as hard as all of my clients do. Um, and I think that's what life's about. Life's about getting rid of the detritus, getting rid of the stuff that you don't necessarily need, that for one reason or another, you latched onto. When I was using food, I was using it like a drug. And maybe you're watching this and you're using alcohol that way, or maybe you're using food that way. And what I found was you need to preserve the intention of whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're overeating and really abusing yourself with food, it's unlikely that you're actually doing it with the intention to destroy yourself. It's likely, much like me, you're doing it to console yourself or to distract yourself from things that you don't really feel you're equipped to handle.
Mhm.
And you've got to admit that to yourself. You've got to allow yourself to feel the emotions that you're trying to suppress or push away. And as you allow that to happen, you install yourself a capacity to get stronger. So I'm glad that everything happened to me that happened to me. I'm not one of these guys that says I wouldn't be where I am today if all that stuff didn't happen, because I don't look at life that way. I think that I could have made an entirely different set of choices that would really have taken me to a painful, tragic place. So when you hear all these motivational guys and girls saying, "Oh, I'm so grateful that I was traumatized," no, I'm not. I'm not grateful that that happened to me. I'm grateful that there was grace in my life for me to be able to come up with an empowering way to address those things. That for one reason or another, I avoided some incredible pitfalls that many, many, many people fall into. I mean, I was in an environment that was rich with opportunities to screw my life up, royally screw my life up. But through grace and through, the mystery of life, uh, I avoided a lot of that. And I think that if you're doing all that you can, the best that you can, there are some assisting forces that come to aid you in life. Just like there are things in life that are afflicting forces, things that work against us. There's also an aspect of of blessedness to our life, that things do work together for the good when you're really doing all that you can, the best you can, and you're taking responsibility for yourself.
Yeah. I think it's very difficult, especially at the age that you started this journey, to like break those generational curses, if you will. When you say, I see what has happened in my family and I don't want to be that. I want to be something more. Let's dissect this three-legged stool for just a minute.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's talk about nutrition.
Mhm.
Obviously, very important for health, very important for physical transformation. How do you approach nutrition with your clients?
Well, I think it's really important, from a more global perspective, that if you're watching this, you don't come at this equation from a siloed approach. A lot of people come at it and they say, well, number one, nutrition's tantamount. It's the most important thing. It's primary. And exercise, yeah, that's kind of important. It's secondary. And yeah, having a good mindset, that matters too, but it's all about nutrition. Or other people, maybe a trainer or a physical therapist say, oh, no, you don't get it. It's all about exercise. I mean, you've just got to be exercising. And yeah, food matters somewhat and mindset matters too, but it's all about exercise. Then other people are out there saying, no, you guys don't get it. If you don't get your head straight, if you don't have the right psychology, you know, while food's important, exercise is important, your life isn't going to work. I think they're all equally important, all three aspects. So from a food perspective, I think that you have to have a strategy that's appropriate for your situation. The old saying, not all diets are created equal. It all, in my estimation, comes down to you're going to have to burn more energy than you're consuming in one way or another. And you're going to have to do it in a way that is sustainable and practical for the givens of your life. If you're working a 16-hour job, and you're trying to support a family of four on a very modest income and you're under an incredible amount of stress, it can feel overwhelming to try to think about healthy nutrition. My father wasn't obese because, he was taking joy in sitting back eating bonbons or something. My father was working, nearly 19 hours a day to keep his small family afloat. And he would grab whatever was easy, whatever was accessible, and whatever seemed to taste well enough for him to eat. So it wasn't that, he was poorly intentioned or he was doing it, like I said earlier, he wasn't doing it to destroy himself. He was doing it out of ignorance. And so I think you have to have a very intelligent, insightful strategy. And if you don't know where to start, there is such an abundance of information out there in terms of what's good for you and what isn't. Some practical things people can do in terms of things I have clients do. I would eliminate all caloric drinks, cut out all the sugar-rich drinks, all the juice, all the milk, all the alcohol, all the regular soda. Really do your best to only consume zero-calorie drinks. I would say also create a schedule for yourself. So you have in place, this is what time I'm going to have breakfast. A few hours later, to buffer myself against a vulnerability of getting hungry, I'm going to have a snack. A few hours later, I'm going to have lunch, so on and so forth. And what I have clients do, and if you're interested, you can find out the exact program in my book. It's called Think and Grow Thin, the first book, is select a set of foods and keep with that set of foods every day. Because if you're like I once was as a 17-year-old, I didn't know what to do. There was so much information. You read one book and it says, if you do this, this will change your life for the better. And then you read another book that says, if you do what that guy said, you're going to die young. There's just so much conflicting information. And when you're struggling like that, and when you already don't have much confidence in yourself, it's really hard. When you don't trust yourself, it's hard to trust anything. And so from a nutrition perspective, you've got to have something that's sensible, something that is practical with your life. If you're a student or if you're a full-time employee somewhere, or if you're a stay-at-home parent, whatever your situation is. But I would try to eat real foods. I would set up a system where you're doing a lot of the same things all the time. And if you're honest with yourself, and if you were to keep a food journal for a week, I bet that you would find you're doing a lot of the same things every day as it is. They're just the wrong things. And so the idea is replace what isn't working with what will. I said earlier, and I digressed. I said, when people use food, it's not to necessarily destroy themselves. It's often to comfort or console themselves. But the way you know that what you're doing isn't at all what you really need to be doing is when you can't get enough of it. When you can't get enough of it, that's how you know it's not what you need. So if you're finding that despite the amount of food you eat, you can never feel satiated, you never feel full, there's a reason. And it's not because you're stupid. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because your strategy is off. So get a good strategy. If you don't know where to start, find someone in your community that's living life the way you want to live life, that has the health, that has the vitality, that has the energy, that has the fitness. You want to work with someone, hopefully. I look at you as a physician. You were telling me you keep yourself in great shape. You're very active. You're a mother of three. You have a partner who's a police officer. You're a busy person. What a blessing you are to your patients. And I don't say that to gratify you. I say it because having coached hundreds of physicians, and that's not hyperbole, how many physicians are there out there that, would be so much more effective and congruent if they were living the life they hoped their patients would lead?
Yeah, a lot.
And so I think it really starts with you. So my whole point was the way that you know that what you're doing with food is ineffectual is you can't really get enough of it. And that goes for everything: alcohol, sex, achievement, work. When you can't get enough of something, it tells you you've got your ladder leaned up against the wrong tree. And what I encourage clients to do is this: don't look at this as you're trying to lose weight. Don't look at this as I'm trying to lose 100, 150, 200 pounds like Charles's clients. No, ask yourself this question. I think it's much more helpful and frankly, much more um, intelligent. And that's this: what's missing in my life that has me believing food is so important? When you stop and you ask yourself, why is food such a highly charged substance? Or why is alcohol? Or why is sex? Or why is work? Or why is winning the next trophy? Or whatever. Why are those things at this point in my life? Why do those feel so important to me? Answer: something's missing. So when a person comes to me and they find themselves pacing the kitchen at night, despite having a very healthy meal, there's a reason for that. And what you should be fascinated in trying to do is understand why you're doing that. Now, the insight isn't enough. It's not like you have this insight and you automatically change. The insight's a step, but then you have to have something to replace the intention of the behavior with. And what I find is many people are emotionally deprived. They don't have the type of depth in relationships that they yearn for, whether it be in their marriage, whether it be in their partnership, whether it be in their friendship. They're lacking that sense of intimacy, because intimacy requires true vulnerability. It requires letting yourself be exposed for everything that you are, all of the strengths and all the weaknesses, and running the risk that you might not be accepted. And that's an incredibly scary thing. And in my experience, men particularly repress a lot of who they are as humans, because they have a archetype in their mind of what really being a manly man's like. And I don't say it in a pejorative sense. I say it because I think that the more you're emotionally starved, the more you're going to try to feed yourself with things that don't work. And so the point is, go to the place that you can actually nourish yourself with the things you need. Where is that? Real relationship. Where does that start? The one you have with yourself. How do I know if I have a good relationship with myself? Well, ask yourself these questions. Am I loving myself? What does that look like? What does love mean? That's a rather abstract term, right? Well, am I paying attention to myself? If you want to know what love is, ask yourself, how do you show someone you care about that you love them? What do? We pay attention to them. We actually show interest in what they're doing. We don't, just gloss over what's going on. We actually sincerely attend to the person in front of us. We connect with our eyes. We create a little circle of intimacy. We match them. We feel what they're feeling. We're paying attention. Are you doing that with yourself? Are you really tuned into how you're doing? Or are you so caught up in the busyness of your life, you've lost connection with you? That's number one. Number two, are you appreciating yourself? Are you stopping to really take stock of all that you've achieved? I mean, I listened to you before we went on the air here, and you told me about the things you've overcome, the loss of a dear friend, so on and so forth. I mean, look at where your life in specific has come in the last 1, 3, 5, 10 years. Don't compare yourself to the people on Instagram that have 5 different filters to make you feel impressed. Compare yourself to how you used to be. Are you really giving yourself credit for the distance that you've traveled? Third, are you really accepting of yourself? Or have you disavowed parts of yourself because perhaps in the environment you grew up in, who you really are wasn't acceptable? Maybe you're someone who's gay or bisexual, or someone who has interests that aren't specifically welcomed in the culture that you're a part of. Well, part of being a healthy adult is valuing your own opinion about yourself and understanding of yourself above everything else. It's giving up the hope that everyone else is going to understand you, because you really want to work to understand yourself. Are you in a culture where there's still a lot of racism? What you want to do is you want to really make room for all that you are and really bring that level of acceptance to the deepest part of you. Maybe there are things you have regret over in your life. I'm not suggesting that you should accept things that you shouldn't have done in your life. Maybe you took advantage of people. Maybe you've done things that you really feel bad about. Maybe you should feel bad about those things, but you shouldn't feel bad about who you are, because there's always the possibility for redemption in life. It's never too late to turn direction, but you can't do that when you won't accept yourself. Fourth, show yourself affection. Are you being loving to your body? Are you moving it? Are you feeding it? Are you resting it? Are you taking care of it? Are you abusing alcohol and drugs? You've got to take stock and say, am I really taking care of myself and my body like I would a child I cared about? That's a good way of looking at it. Am I taking care of myself the way I would someone I really, really care about? And the last thing we have to do in terms of showing love to ourselves so that we have it to give to other people is making room for all the feelings we have instead of pushing them aside or telling ourselves they're wrong. Maybe you grew up in an environment where, if you cried, someone would say, keep crying, I'll give you a reason to cry. And so maybe you've believed that crying says something bad about you, that letting yourself grieve is wrong. And to be a full, healthy adult means making room for all of the human capacities. There was a great philosopher who once said, the name escapes me, nothing human is alien to me. And I think that the more that you can delve into your own personal understanding of yourself, the greater gift you become for all the people in your life. And only once you have established a loving relationship with yourself can you experience the type of loving relationship you probably tell yourself you really want. And that's because you've done the deep work.
Yeah, it's incredible the self-love, emotional connection that a lot of people have when it comes to food. In particular, I obviously am a women's health provider. And I think a lot of women use that as an emotional coping mechanism. I deserve this. It's been a tough day. It's my birthday, or, whatever it is. When it comes to nutrition with your clients, do you feel that, a lot of people talk about like preparing meals ahead of time and things like that. What are a few just little tips and tricks when it comes to nutrition that you find your clients find more success doing?
Yeah. Well, first off, this may have went much more deep than you anticipated.
No, but that you're drawing that connection, because I think that it's more than just food. It's more than just,
I can give you like,
for most
like
people.
here's a healthy meal plan, but I don't think that that's what really people need. Certainly I'll give you what you're asking, but I have a question before I answer yours, if I may. And if you don't answer, you can tell me. You talked to me initially about how much you've accomplished and how busy your life is. Do you find yourself, as you go through all that you're doing, treating your patients, doing the podcast, achieving these wonderful things that you've talked about athletically, do you ever find yourself feeling pulled?
Say that one more time.
Do you ever find yourself feeling pulled?
Pulled?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Given you have so many different things that you described you're up to, do you find that experience? You mentioned being a women's healthcare provider. Do you find that you feel pulled in many directions? I mean, is there a part of you that wishes it was more singular, or do you like the setup?
So this is an interesting question, because I get a lot of questions I get from people is, I don't understand how you do it. How do you do it all? How are you a mom and you're a doctor and you do this and you do that? For me, I hate the word balance. I like the word harmony, because I think that all areas of my life can simultaneously be on their own journey. And at any given moment, I decide what's most important today, what's most important in these 24 hours that I think will keep me fulfilled, take care of my family. So I never feel, I think if a blatant answer would be yes, I always feel pulled. But at the same time, I have a very clear vision of who I am and what I want. And I just figure out how to harmonize all of those little, pulls essentially on any given day. And sometimes it means completely shutting off work and all of those, things to spend really valuable time with my kids. And I just try to be present 100%, which whatever I'm giving into, it's in this minute, right now, this podcast right now, it's 100% of my, attention to you. And that's how I find, the most success in doing a lot of different things.
Well, I happen to agree with you. I don't think there's such a thing as balance because, first off, balance is boring. You probably lose interest in things pretty quickly if everything just felt, predictable. But I like the idea of harmony or integration, working those things together. But the reason I ask is my experience, particularly when I've coached many female clients, is um, in the age range between mid 20s to 40. I find that many women find it very difficult to feel as fulfilled as they would hope to when they have children, being away from their children. And I wonder if that was your experience.
Yeah, there's always been, layers of guilt, being especially an OBGYN, right? I
Mhm.
might get called at any moment. But at the same
Yes.
time, my kids understand relationships are understanding each other's basically goals and aspirations, physically, mentally, spiritually, right? So I have very open conversations with my children. They know that my job is very fulfilling. They know that, I'm making a choice to go deliver, life,
Yes.
and I might miss a softball game, or whatever it is. And I think that really relieves these feelings that, like, I think a lot of women experience when it comes to guilt. Like, if I go exercise, if I spend this 30 minutes going to the gym, now I'm missing 30 minutes, with my children. Or if
Precise.
I,
Yes. Yes.
if I choose to bring my own lunch instead of, going to happy hour with my girlfriends, now I've suddenly experienced a loss, there. Now I feel guilty about that. I'm not, because I think as women we have this nurturing, feeling, and we're like give, 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 and it feels very selfish to do anything for
Mhm.
ourselves. And so I find, in those years after women have children, that, I watch this transformation, that they just start letting themselves go
Yes.
for everybody else.
Yes, and I think that that's something people have to be very sensitive to, and it might have something to do too, temperamentally, with just people that are more agreeable. People that, to your point, that don't want to risk the disapproval of other people, so they continue to give, 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 even at their own expense, to the point that it's costing them far more than it could ever be of any benefit. So the reason I ask that is I think people need to hear that. I think that it needs to be affirmed that it's not selfish to take care of yourself. The obvious old axiom that, if a plane goes down for an emergency landing and the oxygen masks drop down, do they tell you to put the oxygen mask on your child first? No, of course not. They say you have to put on yourself first. And that's easier said than done in my experience with parents, because there is a part of us that naturally and instinctually feels that that child's life is the most important thing. And I think it takes a little bit of sophistication. And I love what you had to say about the clarification of expectation and the clarification of boundaries within your family. So your children know what to expect, they know what mom's up to. And it's beautiful to hear the degree of satisfaction and fulfillment and meaning that all these things that you're pursuing bring to your life. I think it sounds to me like it really enriches your life in a lot of ways.
Yeah, through my transformation, I always tell females, you can't be filling other people's cups if your pitcher's empty.
Very well put.
So my kind
Yes.
of motto is pay yourself first. So when I get up in the morning, the very first thing I do, I set my intentions for the day and I go to the gym. That is
Beautiful.
what I do, because that's a non-negotiable for me. And that actually helps me perform better in all other areas of my life.
Mhm.
And so I think that that is a shift for a lot of women, understanding that taking care of themselves actually allows them to show up even better in other areas of their life, and not the other way around. You're not showing up as less, when you take care of yourself. And yeah, it's
I think that when you neglect yourself, I think it tilts you towards becoming bitter. And even at an unconscious level, I mean,
like
it's
resentment. Mhm.
yes, resentment and cynicism. And in a marriage specifically, if
Mhm.
those types of weeds that grow for all of us, my wife and I have arguments, but the difference for my wife and I is that as soon as an issue arises, we address it. And so this all, believe it or not, this is all going to loop back and answer your question about nutrition. uh, you need to deal with the small problems as soon as you see them. So as soon as you see an issue that is with regard to food, we know that we should obviously shop the perimeter of the grocery store. Where's the lean protein? Where are the fruits? Where are the vegetables? The further in the middle of the grocery store you get, the fewer things you can pronounce on labels.
Danger
So
zone.
a simple, yes, yeah. So a simple thing that you can do, is to make certain that the things you are eating are as minimally processed as possible. As I said earlier, I'll eliminate all caloric drinks, and that means even the latte with low fat skim milk or whatever you're doing. You just drop that stuff out. And I would say that the most powerful thing a person could do would be to decide upon a intelligent, healthful eating strategy and commit 100% to it for 90 days. For 90 days. Don't second guess it. Don't look for an out. Commit 100%. Whatever that eating plan, that strategy is going to be, commit to it. And if it, like for many of my clients, makes it easy for you by eating a lot of the same things every day, so what? If it's nutritious, nutrient dense food, great. And keep consistent and make the decision. You know what? I can do anything for 90 days. I would put my money on in 90 days, you're going to feel better than you'd ever expect. If you'll simply commit to a consistent pattern of healthy eating and then couple that with routine cardiovascular exercise. If you have time to be able to do weight training, I'm all for it. But given the frenetic pace of most of my clients' lives and the people that I encounter day to day, it's difficult for them to carve out an hour for themselves, as sad as that sounds. But
Mhm.
if it comes to really wanting to lose fat, I'd suggest putting the accent initially on just integrating a regular cardiovascular routine for maybe 30 minutes in the morning. The first thing you do is you get up, you put on your gym clothes, and if you don't have a treadmill or an elliptical or a Peloton, you start at your front door and you go one way 15 minutes and come back 15 minutes. Start with where you are. So those are some practical things people can do. Another thing that people can do right away, if you're watching this, is, as I said earlier, I kind of alluded to it, find someone who's fit and ask how they are. How are you healthy? How do you stay in shape? I did what I did without the help of any type of formal coach. There wasn't a Charles D'Angelo that met with me every 2 weeks who walked me through the types of things that I walk clients through.
Yeah.
So I found a hole in the marketplace, so to speak, and that's what I filled. I thought to myself, how wonderful would it have been to have a person in my life who I looked up to, who I admired, who embodied the types of things that I was working toward, who would mentor me. And instead of looking for that person, I became him. And so I think that that's what each of us ought to do, is find someone in your vicinity. And if you don't, here's a cool thing. We're in the world now, post-pandemic, so to speak. I know it's not over everywhere, but for the most part, restrictions have been lifted. But here's something that's, an unintended consequence of it. People have become very comfortable using this type of platform to communicate. We're not even in the same room, and we're talking, you're in Nebraska, I'm in Missouri. You can find a coach who's not in your town. If you're ashamed, as unfortunate as I think that is, because I don't think anyone should carry around shame about where they find themselves. But if that's where you're feeling, you feel embarrassed, you're too embarrassed, like I once was, to go through the doors of a gym. Well, then hop online, find someone that really looks and walks the talk, and reach out. Have the courage to ask for help. I don't think there's anything more powerful that you can possibly do than recognizing your own limitation and reaching out to someone who's probably more willing and excited to help you than you anticipate, by showing the vulnerability you have, and then enjoying the acceptance that you get when someone really shows an interest and wants to help you improve your life.
Incredible. I liked what you said when you were talking about eating a lot of the same things. I eat a lot of the same things, and I still do to this day. I'm 5, 6 years into my journey, and it seems very mundane to people. But I always say, listen, when you drive to work every day, you probably drive the same way every single day, even though there's 100 different ways that you could drive to work.
Yes.
Why do you take the same roads every day? Well, I don't
Yes.
know. I just do it. That autopilot. And so I think, for a lot of people listening, that will really just put your nutrition on autopilot, to quit
There you go.
overthinking it. I think social media and like Pinterest, especially for moms, like they think that their family dinner has to be some gourmet
Lavish
piece
affair.
because that will make them all happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. If
no.
that's your source of happiness, I feel really sad for you, because to extend your metaphor, your analogy of it, have you ever, watching this, have you ever, maybe on a Saturday morning, you're driving along, you're going to the gym or something, and your phone rings and it's a really important call. And you find yourself, you're on the highway that you usually take to work, but you're going to the gym and you get engrossed in this call and you're just talking and you're passionate. And all of a sudden, the call is coming to an end and you look up and you notice you're almost to work, but it's Saturday. And you're thinking, what the heck happened? I'm supposed to be going to the gym. Why did I get off at that exit? Well, if you've had that happen, that shows you the power of unconscious programming. And
Mhm.
what you and I are trying to communicate to people is that you can consciously program yourself to do the right stuff. So when stress happens in your life, you're not going to change the beat. You're not going to change the cadence. You're not, if you get called at 2:30 in the morning to deliver a little baby, that's not going to make it such that the next day you don't work out. You're so calibrated that you will naturally orient yourself to get to where you want to go. But that's because you've already defined a couple of things. I think this is going to hit on a very big, important point for your viewers. In order to have lasting transformation, like I have, many of my clients have, you have to totally shift your identity to one of being a healthy, active, athletic person. If you still see yourself in your own mind's eye as a person who's fat, obese, fill in the blank with whatever put downs you want to put in there, you're going to find it very difficult psychologically to get away from that default. That's kind of your thermostat. So if you want to create lasting change, it doesn't matter if it's in the area of relationship, health, wealth, spirituality, career, you have to look at what that thermostat is set at right now. And if you don't know what it's set at, look around you. Because the old saying, we're the average of the 5 people closest to us, is
Mhm.
fairly accurate.
Yeah.
And so it's really important. Where are you spending your time? And who are you spending your time with? And then you've got to ask yourself, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, am I going to feel fulfilled if this is as far as I've grown? Because I think that's what life is all about. It's not about more money, more achievement, or any of those things. It's about growth. It's about meaning. It's about continuing to expand into all that you can become in this particular journey. And I think that's what it takes for us to become heroic. When you look at the films that have stood the test of time recently in our generation, it would be a film like Harry Potter, right? That everyone knows and everyone's drawn to and kids watch over and over and over again. Or Lord of the Rings, or any of those stories. I think it's because it tells the story that's so instinctually part of the human narrative. And that is, you start out and you encounter an incredible challenge and things come to your aid, despite something that looks like it's going to overtake you. But you confront the thing you're most afraid of, you transcend it, you become stronger, better, and wiser because of it. And then you come back home and bring those gifts to people.
Mm.
I think that's what each of our life stories is supposed to be about. And each of us, journey that path with different details. But the underlying story is the heroic journey. There's a wonderful book, if anyone's interested, by a gentleman named Joseph Campbell, called A Hero of a Thousand Faces, I believe. And it's all about that, the archetype of the hero. And I think the things that we're attracted to and called towards in terms of stories in that are things that tell that story. And if you look at all great stories, even a story like the Wizard of Oz with Judy Garland, same thing, female heroine, but same thing, something happens in her life that takes her out of where she is to a foreign exotic place. And she has to take this journey in pursuit of finding an answer. And when she gets there, what does she find? She's always had the answer.
Mhm.
So I think each of us come to that in our own way and with our own timing. From a practical perspective, not to be so existential, you've got to have a sound food plan. So if you don't, reach out to someone like you or to me or to someone in your area who will sit down with you and help you hammer out, here's something you can do, or go and buy a book, but set up a plan, stay consistent. Second, you need to make sure you have a ritualized exercise program that you are making a habit so it becomes, as you said, something you don't even have to think about. And then thirdly, you want to make sure that as much as you're paying attention to what you're consuming physically in food form, you're also paying attention to what you're consuming mentally. What are you allowing to influence you? What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you not reading? One of uh, the great influences on me was a guy named Jim Rome. And he used to say in his seminars, find out the books that poor people read and don't read them. And so the thing is you want to be very selective about what you're allowing to get in your head. You need to really stay on guard at how you think. And some of us are born into an environment where all there is negativity. So I think it's really, really important that you think of those aspects, you take stock of them. Most importantly, is know that it's possible. Know that regardless of where you're starting, no matter what's happened to you, no matter what you regret, it is never too late for you to change direction. Never. And if you have doubt, don't take my word for it. You can, check out my website. There's hundreds and hundreds of stories of clients that had every reason not to be successful that got over it, that transcended it. And that's really something you need to understand. I imagine as I'm sitting here, some 18-year-old sitting in front of the screen, listening to me and you talk, and they really want to change, but they don't know where to start. First off, I think it's a wonderful thing that you want to start. I think it's a beautiful thing that technology has allowed this type of information to get out there, and know that there are people that will assist you. It's scary to ask for help. It's scary to step out of your comfort zone. But what do you want to do? Do you want to stay where you are? I mean, look around you in the room you're sitting in. Is this where you want to be the rest of your life? You don't have to. There's
Yeah.
nothing stopping you.
I think there's always somebody in this world that is willing to meet you at your level of interest and commitment. Because I'm sure you get a
Absolutely.
lot of people in your coaching and they're like, oh yeah, I'm interested. I want Charles' transformation. I want to do that. Right. But then you find out maybe they're not really, at the level of commitment that 17-year-old Charles was.
Well, a
So
lot of people want the product, but they don't want the process.
yeah. 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 And that's what people really need to, they don't like to be exposed. And that's
Well,
where,
people are afraid. I think fear is something that's very scary. I certainly can relate. I mean, I was so scared, and I was conditioned by all the bullying to anticipate rejection. But one of the greatest gifts I've ever had, too, was the number one was meeting my wife, because I was met with such an unconditional acceptance and love that it just inbred in me incredible um, incredible capacities that I didn't even know were there. That was one. And then also developing really deep male friendships. I mean, I have a best friend who's like a brother to me, and the type of intimacy and vulnerability that relationship has fostered has allowed for me to bring that capacity to everything else. And I think people are very afraid, for a variety of reasons that we talked about in this last hour, about being vulnerable. And they haven't learned how to manage fear. And the recipe for managing fear is very simple. One, admit it. I'm afraid. Tell yourself the truth. I'm afraid. So with the friend I'm thinking about, the man in my life who's my best friend, we have a rule. We'll never be dishonest with each other, even when it's scary to tell each other the truth. And I learned that rule with my wife. You need to bring that type of honesty to all of your relationships. If you want to have a really exciting life, be honest with yourself and with other people. If you're bored with your life, get rid of self-deception. Start telling yourself the truth about things and start telling other people the truth. Now, I don't mean be careless. I mean, you have to be very careful with words, because they really impact people. But stop telling yourself things that aren't true, and stop telling people things that aren't true. Start being really matter of fact. And you'd be amazed at how much better your life gets when that's what you start doing. I mean, the level of richness that your life has when you're fully human with other people, and you cast away all the belief systems that were put on you. It's so freeing, and it's so heartwarming, and everything takes on another color when you have that philosophy and approach to life. And that's what I wish for the person watching this, is that they leave this and they say, not only it's possible, but I can do this.
that's incredible. Yeah. I think that you look at high achievers like yourself, and they're eating right, they're taking care of themselves physically, but I think that emotions are something that tends to derail people. And I loved how you said that with fear, like just admit that you're scared and then, you know, figure out a way to move on and move past that. Like it's okay to emote those emotions, but if you continue to let them, perpetuate and fester, I think that's what can really sometimes hurt people's progress.
I always tell people that it's often the case they upgrade their phones more than they upgrade their own psychology. And
Hmm.
so I think it's really important. The first step I said is to admit, but secondly, you need to allow yourself to feel it. Don't distract yourself with food or alcohol or run away from it or lie to yourself. Allow yourself to feel it. And then the last thing is after you've allowed yourself to feel it, is act in spite of the feeling. So be afraid and do it anyway. So tell the person how you're feeling. That's all called assertiveness. It's learning how to say, this doesn't work for me, or this is really great and I really appreciate it. It's being vulnerable and being honest with yourself. I think that is ground zero for personal change, is self-honesty.
Yeah,
That is the bedrock of real change. Change doesn't happen until you get honest with yourself.
I love it. So to wrap this up,
Yeah.
Charles, tell people where they can find your books or how they can work with you if they're interested in doing that.
Yeah. So you can go to my website. It's charlesdangelo.com. And I hope that you'll go there and watch videos, because I think that it's one thing to hear one person tell their story. But I know when I was 360 pounds as an adolescent, as I said earlier, it was hard for me to trust anything. I mean, how many programs, books, DVDs, pieces of equipment out there that claim to transform your life? But I think that what I built is a platform so that there are so many different voices from people of all different backgrounds, education levels, walks of life, ages. So you can go there and look at a story of someone who reminds you of where you are and see where they are now. So my website's a great place to start. You can find my books. The first one's called Think and Grow Thin at every major library, bookstores, Amazon, my website. And the second book is called Inner Guru, and that's available in the same places too.
Incredible. Well, this has been so wonderful, Charles. Thank you for your time, your knowledge, your vulnerability, and sharing, your own story. And I know
Absolutely.
people are going to get so much out of it. So thank you, Charles. And thanks everybody for listening. I know this will change so many lives. And the reason we do these podcasts is so we can touch people all over the world. So if you can do Charles and I a favor, leave us your comments, leave us your reviews, make sure you like it, share it with people, share it on your social media, and we'll catch you all in the next episode. Hey, it's Dr. Jaime, and let's talk about the importance of salt and electrolytes. If you're living the low carb life like me, your requirements are actually much higher. And there's only one source that we trust in our home, and it's the people and products at Redmond Real Salt. They keep us coming back for more every time. Real salt's an all natural, unrefined sea salt harvested from an ancient ocean. It's full of natural minerals that make it healthy, delicious, and pink or red looking. They're also the best selling brand in America's health and food stores. Redmond Real Salt is so pure, it's free of pollutants and microplastics found in many other natural refined salts. The Redmond Salt Deposit is in Redmond, Utah, where the team enjoys award winning work conditions and generous pay. And since they own and control the whole process, you can be sure that real salt comes to you through their world class production facilities in its unrefined, mineral rich, delicious state, exactly as nature intended. Redmond has amazing natural products, including salt, electrolytes, toothpaste, and so much more. So check out the entire line at www.redmond.life, where you can use my code DrFit, that's DRFIT, for a discount on all Redmond Real Salt and Relight products.